Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Whispers, which is episode 14 of season 2 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Star Trek as determined by my Patreon user polls. The episode to win my latest Patreon poll is the Deep Space Nine episode Whispers. So, Whispers is the episode in which O'Brien returns from the Gamma Quadrant to find everyone behaving strangely. His wife seems acting very weird. Cisco's acting very weird. He's being locked out of all of his work, and people just behavior becoming more and more bizarre until the point where O'Brien has to run away from his own crew who are trying to apprehend him. So he runs away to the Gamma Quadrant, back to where he left, to find out that he is in fact not O'Brien but a replicant, a duplicate of O'Brien sent to assassinate the visiting ambassadors from this planet, and that the real O'Brien has been held prisoner, and they just released him, and he was released in time to see the replicant O'Brien die in his arms. So, yes, so I hope I didn't give a spoiler warning for this, but I'm assuming everyone who watches these videos have seen the episode. I mean, come on, it's like 30 years old or whatever. But anyway, this has always been one of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine. When this episode first aired, or at the end of Season 2, because this is a Season 2 episode, I considered Duet my favorite Deep Space Nine episode, and Whispers my second favorite. Now, in the coming seasons, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we got a lot of really great episodes. So Whispers didn't stay my second favorite episode of the show, although Duet did stay my first favorite. But Whispers stayed in like the top 15, I would say, of episodes to me. It always hovered in that upper echelon, or at the very least top 20. I believe I did have it in my top 15 when I did my latest Deep Space Nine countdown. So it's always been a favorite of mine. And it's funny because when I look at the reaction to this episode, it seems to be a very polarizing episode. Some people love it. Some people don't like it and think it's bad. Which that reaction surprised me. Because I always loved this episode. Now, I will grant you, and a lot of complaints about this episode is that it's dull and it's kind of boring, which I definitely see that, because it is a slow-moving episode that does kind of, maybe it would have been better if it was shorter, to be honest. Like, it does hover a bit, such as you have scenes with O'Brien searching through all the logs of the various officers in the stations, and he's listening to personal logs and various logs, and I will admit that some of that stuff does drag a little bit, but I think most of the episode is not boring. I think most of it is great in building atmosphere. So the sum of the episode is O'Brien returns to the station, and then people start acting strangely, but it starts to get worse. Like, it accumulates, like there's more strange occurrences that happen as we go. Now, what really attracted me to this episode is because at this point in time when this episode was released, this is something we've seen in Star Trek a lot before, but typically, like, it's like a parallel universe. Like, when I first saw the preview for this episode, I'm like, this is probably like he's ended up in a parallel universe, where like a mirror universe is similar to his, but everyone is like strange, or that reality has been warped in some way, like, but whatever it was, like, I was totally in the mindset that the problem wasn't him, and that it was the universe. And that is something that the episode itself sells, and I think it does a damn good job of it. I think I heard the opinion once that the episode would have been better if we knew O'Brien was a replicant to begin with, and boy howdy, it is impossible for me to disagree with that opinion more. I think that would have literally ruined the episode. I think it is the episode's biggest strength that we don't know that this is a replicant, that we think it. I mean, yeah, that is what makes this episode so great, and that's what they sold so well, because our viewpoint character is this O'Brien replicant who we think is O'Brien. And so the episode shows everything through his point of view, so we believe what he believes, that everyone else is acting strange, that Keiko is being like weird, and that she's trying to poison him, and that Cisco is being an asshole and locking him out of his work, and that Bashir is, being a dick to him for no good reason, and that people are slowly starting to turn on him. Like, he thinks he has Odo as an ally, but all of a sudden he's like turns on him and he's like, oh, and he starts acting weird. And he thinks, oh, Jake is the only one who is treating me normal, so he goes to Jake, and Jake turns him in. It's like, just surrender, you'll be fine. Like, that's brilliant. It creates this atmosphere of like this bizarre world type atmosphere where everyone's starting to behave strangely and turn on him, and it creates this really great atmosphere of paranoia and what the hell is actually going on. And I think the reveal when I first saw that when the real O'Brien pops up, that shocked the hell out of me. Like, that was the last thing that I was expecting. As I said, like, this is Star Trek. I thought it would be like a parallel universe or holodeck or or a alien virus trying to eat him alive or something. I did not expect, like, this wasn't actually O'Brien. Like, I think this is probably one of the best twists that Star Trek has ever pulled off. And more than that, and I think I heard the opinion recently that if you go back and watch this episode after the twist, it doesn't hold up, and there's some holes, which I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Like, that's, again, another opinion I would have to completely 100% disagree with. Like, I think this episode holds up beautifully. Like, it makes so much more sense on a rewatch once you know the catch. Like, because you can actually track everything that's going on, knowing what you know, that this is an imposter, and in fact that the people aren't acting weird. It's O'Brien who's weird, and well, they are acting weird because they know that this might not be their O'Brien. Now, they're not 100% certain, but of course they have this suspicion, which they strongly believe is correct. But so the way I see this playing out, and what doesn't occur off screen, in fact, the screenwriters said that they had to purposely, they couldn't show a scene without O'Brien, and they couldn't have like a B plot or a scene from the other character's point of view, because the other characters would be talking about how this isn't the real O'Brien, and that's information that they want to withhold. And I think that's actually brilliant that they didn't do that, because again, it also puts us into the mindset of O'Brien, where we see the world through his eyes, because he really believes he's O'Brien, so the audience themselves should also really believe that he's O'Brien, it's brilliant. So anyway, but if you go back and look at this episode, knowing the twist, the scenes that we're missing, that we're not getting, is Cisco telling Keiko about what happened. Like, look, your husband, I think, we have evidence, we suspect that this isn't really your husband, that your husband's being held against his will, and this is an imposter meant to mimic him perfectly. But we don't know for sure, and we don't want to tip our hand, because we don't want him to suspect anything, because he could be activated prematurely, and who knows what he's going to do. He could set off a bomb, he could try to destroy the station, he could try to kill someone. So we have to play cool. We can't let him know that we're onto him, so we have to act like he's the real O'Brien. And this is what I love about this, because it shows how trained Starfleet officers, like Cisco especially, but Cisco and Bashir, like, are really good at this. Like, they're good at playing cool and acting like nothing's wrong, like this is the actual Brian. But someone like Keiko is not trained. And so she's terrible, especially knowing that this thing that is pretending to be her husband is trying to make out with her and kiss her and stuff, how she's readily repulsed by it, and how she's trying to make up excuses on the fly, how she's trying to get Molly away from him and trying to get away from him as much as possible because rightfully she's scared of him. But she's not actually, like, by doing that, she is not behaving the way that Keiko would behave around him. So he, who, thinks he's actually O'Brien and behaves exactly like O'Brien would behave, sees her as acting weird, as her as being the weird one, because he knows her so well, and he can tell that something's wrong and she's hiding something and she's behaving strangely because she's not trained at it. Like, if it were just the only thing that tips him off with Cisco and Bashir is the locking him out of the his security work, which they try to come up with an excuse, but he eventually can see through it. But that mainly combined with the weird behavior from Keiko, like, I think that is his biggest tip-off that something is behaving strangely. And I will say that Kira, although she's like more of a military militia fighter, resistance fighter, who just recently came into a position of an administrator of a space station, so I don't think she was particularly well trained in pretending this as well. You can tell that she tries to act normal, but she's not really acting normal. Like when she sees O'Brien on the promenade, she's like, "Oh, everything okay, everything all well," and she's Chief, and he's like, yeah, all good. But he can tell, like, there's something weird, like the way that she hovers around him and the way that she's like, look, because you can tell that she's worried that he's going to do something wrong, that he's going to be activated and kill someone or try to blow up the station, that she's kind of hovering around him that way. So she's letting her, same as Keiko, letting her fear get the better of her and not acting normal around him. And so that's what he's detecting, and that's what what tips him off. Now, as I said, I think Cisco and Bashir do the best job, because Cisco probably could have done better. He probably should have warned O'Brien that, because O'Brien went to oversee the security measures and saw his underling, like, working on it instead of him, and he gets all pissed off and goes to Cisco. Now, Cisco probably could have done a better job by warning him. That would have been the case, but he covers up for it really well. Like, he's like, "Oh, I should have told you this. I guess I dropped the ball on that one." Like, his interaction with O'Brien shows just how well trained and how masterfully it is at hiding what's really going on and treating him like O'Brien. And Bashir is the same thing. Bashir does a really good job of saying, "Oh, this is your physical. Everyone needs a physical. You have to have it." And they had that same sort of interaction that they always have. But the thing that kind of tips O'Brien off is not Bashir's behavior, but the fact that Bashir is giving him this, like, ridiculously thorough exam. And of course they try to pass it off as the annual exam, medical exams or whatever, but really it's him trying to prove that this isn't O'Brien. But of course he can't, because it's a such well-made replicant that he couldn't come up with any proof that it was. And I love how and Bashir tries to trick him, like, very expertly, by bringing up his mother who passed away. It's like, "How's your parents?" and whatnot, and tries to just slowly slip it in. But this replicant, it was just created so well. It is identical. Not virtually, it is identical to O'Brien in every way. So O'Brien just thinks it's weird that Bashir is trying to trick him like that. Like, why are you trying to fool me like that? And of course, it would never actually... I do love how it never actually occurs to O'Brien that there's something wrong with him. Like, and as I said, like, I think that translates to the audience. At least it did for me. When I was watching this episode for this first time, I was convinced that it wasn't him that was the problem, that it was the rest of the universe. And then the thing with Jake, of course, Jake obviously didn't know at first, because that it wasn't, that might not be the real O'Brien. So Jake actually was treating him like he would treat O'Brien. So that's why He thought Jake was fine, didn't think there was anything wrong with Jake until the very end, where they definitely told Jake about it, because you see when O'Brien's talking to Jake on the promenade and Kira is hovering around them and say, "Everything okay, Chief?" And Kira tells Jake, "Oh, your dad wants to talk to you about something important." That something important is, hey, don't talk to O'Brien because this is probably a replicant program to kill us. And so we don't see Jake again until the very end, where he freaks out as soon as he sees O'Brien. It's like, just surrender, you'll be fine, and runs away because they obviously told him about what was going on. So I think it's actually, I gotta very strongly disagree with anyone who said that there's holes in it or doesn't hold up in a repeat viewing. I think it holds up really strongly on a repeat viewing, because I think if you look at it from the perspective of the rest of the crew, it makes total sense the way they're behaving and how they're all freaked out by him and how they're trying to lock him out. But of course, this is O'Brien. This replicant is so much like O'Brien that he's able to outfox them the way the real O'Brien would have, and set these booby traps and run away. Now I have to mention, when he contacts the Admiral and tries to tell him there's something wrong with the station, Admiral's like, turn around and go back, that this was the same Admiral who appeared in the episode Past Prologue, who was bitching about her staff meeting. Which I talked about this in the episode before, which I think a lot of people picked up on, but I thought she was a bit of a bitch, and very really condescending towards Kira, and I would go as far as to say racist, because when Kira called her trying to complain about Cisco, she goes behind Kira's back, calls Cisco, "Your underling, your Bajoran that works for you, called and interrupted a staff meeting." And I was so pissed at her. I was like, wow, this is a terrible Admiral who was very insensitive and and shouldn't be an Admiral. And it's funny that this is the Admiral that tells O'Brien to turn around and go back. I wouldn't listen to her either. She's a terrible Admiral. Anyway, screw that staff meeting. Anyway, so I could get why the scenes where he's going rummaging through the personal files would be boring, but I think scenes where they're sitting down to eat dinner, in with Keiko and the Miles O'Brien, and Miles is ask her, "Oh, where's Molly?" And she's like, "Oh, she's gone away. I sent her away." So Miles assumes what the real O'Brien would assume. "Oh, well, it's time for some sexy times then." And of course, she's freaked out by this because it's a replicant who's sent to kill someone, or at least as far as she knows it is. And so, at the very least, she highly suspects that it's not her husband, that this is some other thing. And so of course she's naturally repulsed by this, which takes the real O'Brien off guard. But then she goes back to trying to pretend to, "Oh, I made you your best meal, isn't it so good?" And of course by this point Miles is already freaked out because she's acting so weird that he thinks that maybe she poisoned him, and she refused to eat it. Now the question that was never really answered in this episode, something I've pondered, is, did she actually poison the food? And I think, the way she's behaving, and they purposely play this way because to get it in the audience's head that she's being weird, but the way she's like, "Oh, how's your meal?" when it's obviously he didn't take a bite out of it yet, and when he says, "Oh, I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat it," she visibly looks disappointed. So I actually think that she did put something in the food, and the fact that she's not eating it, that she was eating something else, and plus she made him his favorite meal, and obviously she's not doing this to be nice to him. I think she was doing it to ensure that he ate. Now, do I think she poisoned the food? I don't think so. I think if I were to take a guess, an educated guess, I would think that she put something in there to put him to sleep, so that she wouldn't have to deal with him for the rest of the night, so she wouldn't have to keep pretending. And maybe the senior staff could, if they not just like asleep, but sort of knocked out, so the senior staff could come in and examine him more and whatnot. And maybe that was a deal that she made with Cisco. But as I said, she was a terrible actress because she's not trained to be an undercover agent, and she can't hide her natural disgust of this thing trying to hug her as if he was actually her husband. And so he's able to see through her like the real O'Brien would have. And so that plan doesn't work. But I do think she definitely put something in his food. But I don't think it would have killed him. I think it probably would have more knocked him out. But also, reading the behind the scenes of this, they were saying that Calmini played this played this character as if it was the actual O'Brien. And I think, again, that's brilliant. And I do love how there's not a tail. I wonder if that's what the person was talking about. Oh, if you watch it again, it doesn't hold up. I wonder if they were saying because you can't tell it's a replicant. But that's the whole point. Like, that's the beauty of it, that the replicant was so perfectly made that it's almost indistinguishable from the O'Brien. And I actually love, because I think there have been lesser actors who purposely try to play, if they're playing like a different version of themselves, an imposter, they purposely try to play differences, even if it's subtle differences. Say, oh, this isn't my actual character, this is just another version. Now, depending on the situation, sometimes the story might call for that. Like if there's a spy who maybe doesn't know as much about their subject, or that their person they're impersonating, like for example, the founder who took over Bashir, apparently Alexander Siddig in season 5 played Bashir slightly different because he knew he was a founder, which makes sense because as much as the founders know, they're not perfect, so they could get certain details about Bashir wrong, or sort of have a different character inflection than Bashir would have. But in this particular case, though, it's supposed to be a perfect replicant, a program that emulates O'Brien perfectly, 100%. I love how the actor chose to play it exactly the same way he would play O'Brien, and that's what really sells the episode. Now, let me get to the ending. I usually don't like calling out other YouTube channels, but I do want to mention the channel Lore Runner, which is a channel that I love. He's much better at analyzing Star Trek episodes than I am. I will admit when I'm defeated. Like he is really good at sort of analyzing and putting deep dives into the episode and learning about sort of background information I might know about. But I don't always agree with him, and this is one of the episodes where I really strongly disagree with him. Because he was one of the people who did not like this episode, which it just shocks me and stumbles me. But, so, don't get me wrong, I would highly recommend anyone check out his channel, Lore Runner. It's a great channel, and I have nothing but good things to say about it. But now let me tell you why he's wrong. Because he was saying that the ending was bad, that the O'Brien replicant got killed, and he was saying that the O'Brien replicant shouldn't have got killed, and it would have been better if that he kept living and they created a long-term storyline with that. And this is something I could not disagree with more. I think this ending is beautiful. I think this ending is perfect. I think the ending is by far the best thing about the episode. And I think if the O'Brien replicant lived, it would have ruined the episode. To me, this ending, and I think I even made a comment on this video about this ending is really quintessential Deep Space Nine. This is one of the most Deep Space Nine endings you could possibly have. Like it's so powerful. It really hits home and it really hits the heart that we see this O'Brien that we've been following in our episode, we thought it was a real O'Brien. We empathized with him. We saw through his eyes. We saw how he was so concerned about everyone's acting weird around him, and everyone started betraying him, and everyone's out to get him. We're in his mindset, and then we're being told, like a slap to the face, that this man we've been identifying with, who we thought we sympathized with and we were worried about, that he was actually the villain, that he was the evil replicant sent to assassinate people. and I think having the ending where he actually gets killed, and we get, even after that reveal that he's not the O'Brien we thought he was, we still get that tragic ending for him, where he is shot and killed, and his dying words are to the real O'Brien, tell Keiko that I love her. That is powerful. That is extremely powerful, because it takes, even after it's revealed that this is the villain, just a machine that was programmed to like sabotage these peace talks in some way, perhaps even assassinate people, we're still made to sympathize with him. They still portray his death as something tragic, and that he dies the same way that O'Brien himself would die. And plus, this gives a huge impact on O'Brien himself, watching this other version of him die, cry for his wife. I'm sure this is something that must haunt him. Well, I mean, if this wasn't episodic television that's erased after every episode, but, to any continuity, this is something that would haunt him. Because he would often wonder, is this how I would actually die? And seeing this version of him die in such a way, crawling out for his wife, would make him wonder. That's actually sounds like a really traumatizing thing, and it would make him wonder how he would go out. And so I think it's so powerful, and I think you lose all that, and I think it would be a waste of time. Like, I think this character serves no purpose after this episode. You don't want to keep this character around. I think it would be diminishing returns. I think it's much better to have a powerful, punctuated ending like this that really hits home and sells the episode. So yeah, all due respect to Lore Runner, but he's totally wrong about that. So anyway, I think I have to bring up the Philip K. Dick short story, Imposter. Which was, I never read the short story, but there was a movie made out of it that came out in 2002, which of course is well after this episode aired, with Gary Sinise. And I remember I saw that movie, and when I watched that movie, I was just like, this is just like Whispers, except not as good. So the movie, and in turn the short story, but I had never read the short story, but from my understanding, the premise of it is the same as the movie. But anyway, from when I saw the movie, it was about Earth was at war with this alien race they never met, and they were trying to kill them, so they were coming up with this weapon in order to defeat the aliens. This guy who worked on the weapon, and then the government agencies or whatever said that he wasn't, that the real him had been killed and he was just an imposter, but he thought that was bullshit, and he thinks that it was part of conspiracy to sabotage the weapon, and so he tried to go out of his way to run from the authorities, and it was like this huge chase thing. But then the big reveal, again, spoilers, but you probably see where this is going, he actually was the imposter. And he ends up, and they find, like, at the end he finds the dead body of the real him, and he ends up like blowing up the Earth or sabotaging the weapon, or I don't know, something like that. It's been a while since I've seen this. Anyway, so one could say, and I've heard a lot of people in reviews point out, that this episode took inspiration from this Philip K. Dick short story, and most likely it is, but they don't, the writers, anyone involved with this episode, never mention it, and they don't claim it to be the case. They say that they got through this more of looking at the invasion of the Body Snatchers, and thinking of, well, what if one of the body snatchers didn't know he was a body snatcher, and sort of telling it from their perspective. To me, that feels, I mean, it's possible that they totally came up with it through that means, rather than, and they never even heard of this short story, but that seems like a more convoluted way to get to what is essentially very similar to that short story. But honestly, I like the way Whispers, again, never read the short story, just saw the film, which I don't think was very good. But I like in concept the way Whispers did it better, because in the short story, in the film, the idea is introduced earlier on that this is an imposter, but he's convinced that he isn't. Where here, they never introduced that idea. You just assume throughout the entire story that, of course, this is the correct O'Brien. And it's not till the end that they pull the wool over your eyes and even mention the possibility that could be an imposter, which I think is actually much better. Personally, I think that the concept of doing it that way. Now, did the writers actually rip off the short story, or are they just playing coy? Which wouldn't surprise me, because they were being coy about Siege of AR-558 being Saving Private Ryan. Oh, some people say it has something to do with Saving Private Ryan, but I don't see that at all. Watch my review for AR-558. It is scene by scene Saving Private Ryan. Like, they're definitely just playing coy with that one. They know for damn well they took that straight from Saving Private Ryan. So I wouldn't put it past them that they're doing the same thing here, but I'm more forgiving of it because it's some short story that came out in 1953. So they're, and it's not beat by beat. They definitely changed it in Star Trek Fight it enough to make it their own. So as I said, there's a lot of my favorite Star Trek episodes are inspired by earlier works, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as they make it more unique, which is what they did here. But why don't they just admit it? I mean, I find it hard to believe that they base this off of Invasions of the Body Snatchers and not the short story that is almost exactly like. But whatever. I don't know. Stranger things happen, I guess. But again, as I said with the Siege of AR-558 example, I don't trust them. I think they're liars, and they purposely hide their inspirations because they don't want to get sued. Just my suspicion. Now I'm one being paranoid. But either way, I don't think this hurts the episode at all, and at the very least, the episode was way better than that movie. So anyway, my rating for Whispers out of 10, I'm going to give this a 10, the best. It's still one of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine. I don't care what anyone says. I think it's still one of the best episodes. It does drag a little bit in the middle, I will grant you, but for good purpose. Like the ultimate, I think a lot of the slow-moving scenes do a great job at building the tension, of building that paranoia, putting you in this O'Brien's mindset that something is wrong and it's getting worse, and building that paranoid energy, which I can think of a few other pieces that do it as well as this episode does. And that ending that was probably one of the best twist endings I've ever seen, ever, not just Star Trek, ever. I totally did not see it coming. It totally justified everything. It fits 100%, and it's so powerful, and it makes you sort of question, like, oh, I was feeling so much empathy, and I saw through the eyes of this machine that turned out just to be a machine sent to kill people, and and when you see it die, it's still tragic, and you feel for it. Like, this is powerful storytelling. It's very powerful storytelling, and it does signify the best of what Deep Space Nine can do, and I would say this is a quintessential episode of Deep Space Nine. So anyway, that is it for my review of Whispers. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out my channel as I cover many more Star Trek materials, as well as covering shows like The Expanse, Star Wars The Clone Wars, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all that. Thanks a lot for watching.